Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief Live on the Blood Red YouTube channel with myself, Patrick Smith, and Matt Addison after Liverpool were held at Stamford Bridge by Chelsea in a 2-2 thriller. Matt, what are your initial thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was a brilliant game, wasn't it? It was a game that I think both teams had to probably win to stay in the title race or to stay fully in the title race, certainly. And I think we kind of saw that with the way it went. Obviously, both teams went at it. There's probably a few bits of defending that both teams will be not particularly impressed by, but I thought that the quality of the finishing, particularly in that first half, was brilliant. The decisiveness, the ability really of both teams' attacks was superb. But yeah, I think ultimately, having been 2-0 up in the game, Liverpool will be very, very frustrated. I think it's not the first time, is it, that's happened this season. I think that's the big thing, really, that once they get themselves 2-0 up, I think they've got to find a way, really, to just see that game out. And it's just, a 2 or 3 minute spell, really, at the end of the first half, which has cost them. And unfortunately for Liverpool, it does look like Manchester City are going to run away with it. I think at the top, it's probably fair to say now that it's going to be a big, big ask for Liverpool to go on and win the league from this position, which is a huge frustration. But yeah, they put themselves in a position really where they could have gone on and won that game. And unfortunately for them, just that few minutes, obviously Chelsea were brilliant, but those 2 goals in quick succession, I think has absolutely killed them, really.
I think frustration is the exact word, Max. The amount of times this season that we've gone 2-0 up, literally 2-0 up in the first half an hour, blistering, unbelievable gegenpressing football, and then just collapsed before half time. It happened again today, didn't it? Why is this happening?
I don't know. It's really strange. I think, to be fair, Chelsea were very unlucky to be 2 goals down. I think they played really well. I think they fully deserve a point from the game, the way that they played, to be honest. But I just think it stems really from James Milner giving away that free kick on Kai Havertz. From that, they get the first one, which is an unbelievable finish, to be fair, to Kovacic. It's a brilliant goal. And obviously the other goal as well comes quickly off the back of that. So, yeah, I think... Look, Milner played okay. I think there was maybe a few eyebrows raised at the fact that he was in the team today, and it has been a little bit costly. I think he did okay generally across the course of the game, but that 5-minute spell, you just think, he's in there really for his experience, and he's given away a daft free kick when he just didn't need to. So that's what it stems back to for me, is just that moment. Other than that, I mean, there was a few moments where Liverpool looked a little bit ropey, but at the same time, Chelsea did exactly the same. It wasn't as if, Liverpool were under the cosh for the entirety or anything like that. So it's really strange. It's something that they have to kind of find a way of addressing, but I don't know. It's not as if it's been a 2-0 up and then a 2-2. That obviously, as you say, that's happened a few times this season, and that will be the frustration. But it's not as if there's kind of a familiar theme. It's not like James Milner's done that before. It seems to be a slightly different squandering of that 2-goal lead each time it happens. So it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is. But yeah, I think Chelsea will be frustrated as well. But Liverpool, having been 2-0 up, I think have probably got the most cause for that.
I mean, a 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge is by no means a bad result, especially given the way Chelsea played. I thought they were really good, actually. And I don't like criticising players, but James Milner, Matt, he's been a fantastic servant to the club, fantastic servant to the Premier League, but he's about to turn 36. How many other Premier League sides would he start for? Is it time that we let Naby Keita or Curtis Jones coming back in now take that place up?
Yeah, I was surprised, to be honest. I thought it'd be Keita or Oxlade-Chamberlain. I thought Curtis Jones, when he came on, obviously it was only a few minutes at the end, looked really, really good, to be fair. But yeah, it was a strange one. I think it could have gone one or two ways. I think it could have been one where Liverpool controlled the game a little bit more, and you could kind of say that it was his experience that helped Liverpool do that. But I think maybe the way it's gone, it was slightly more chaotic than probably most people would have imagined, and it's just not the game that maybe suits him. Obviously, I mentioned the sort of 5-minute spell, which I think is kicked off by him giving away the foul. I mean, there was a few bits in there that do frustrate you, but to be honest, I'd probably look at it the other way, and it says a lot, I think, about Naby Keita, the fact that he's not getting in the team ahead of Milner for this game. I think Curtis Jones probably would have done. We saw him start, obviously, against Manchester City at Anfield earlier in the season, so I still think there's a lot of trust in him, but obviously he's been out for a good while. He's not played a lot of football, so it would have been a big ask, really, to have him in from the start. But yeah, I think on another day, maybe it could have been somebody else, but Keita hasn't had the best couple of weeks. Oxlade-Chamberlain has been okay, but has played a bit of football. And obviously Curtis Jones wasn't deemed fit enough to start and play the entirety of it. So, yeah, I suppose without wanting to look for excuses, possibly the players that have been missing today, Thiago and others, maybe it's a little bit of that, as much as obviously Milner coming in has not helped Liverpool. I think,
Gini Wijnaldum missing.
It was a decision that could have gone one or two ways, I think, and unfortunately for Liverpool, it's maybe not gone the way that they would have wanted.
Well, let's move on to the game, and the two boys that are heading off to AFCON were always going to be the story of the game, weren't they? But Sadio Mane got right amongst it in the first 6 seconds. Do you think he was lucky to stay on the pitch?
Yeah, I do, to be honest. I saw Anthony Taylor running across to him, and you did fear the worst. I think, I don't know what it is, but he seems to do this in some of these big games. There'll be one challenge, and teams will try and rile him up. But I mean, Chelsea hadn't even had the time to rile him up at that point. It was just Liverpool kicked off, launched it, and he puts an elbow into Azpilicueta's face. So, yeah, I think
one of the old destabilizers.
Possibly the fact that it was so early in the game has probably helped him a little bit. I think, look, on another day, he could quite easily have been sent off. I think probably levels itself up a little bit later on when Mason Mount kicks out at Tsimikas. That could have easily been a red card as well. But yeah, it was a silly one. He went on actually to play pretty well, Sadio Mane, throughout the game. I thought it was much better than what he's been doing recently. Obviously scores the goal, which is nicely taken as well, which ends that 9-game drought for him. So, look, it was a decent game from him, but it could have been very, very different. If he gets sent off after 6-7 seconds, whatever it is, and Liverpool go on and lose, then you really would fear for him in terms of the reaction to that. So, yeah, it was a strange one. For me, it was a red card, and he's a little bit lucky there.
Well, fortunately, he didn't get sent off, and then he scored about, I think it was in the 9th minute. Good to see him scoring again, Matt, wasn't it? Because he's had a bit of a drought, Sadio Mane.
Yeah, he's not been at it, I don't think, for the last few games. I think the course of this season has seen him start pretty well in terms of goal scoring. I think he got up to 9 or 10 goals. Didn't really play particularly well. But then the last few weeks, it's not really found the back of the net, not really been playing well. It's just not quite happened for him. So, yeah, he was clearly up for it today. I think, obviously, coming up against Azpilicueta rather than Reece James helps him a lot. I think Chelsea defended really well in the reverse fixture and stopped him really having any of the space. But today seemed to do a lot better in that regard. Obviously finds the back of the net. But like I say, it's hard to look past that first incident because we've spoken about it a lot recently, but it is fine margins. You don't want to praise him too much because quite deservedly could have been sent off very early there, and that would have been a completely different game.
Well, let's hope he can get his confidence back with a good tournament for Senegal and maybe lead them to the trophy. But the second goal, Matt, we've got the best right-hand side in the world. I'm going to call it there. The best player in the world as well, Mohamed Salah. Unbelievable goal once again, wasn't it?
Yeah, just like watching Lionel Messi, isn't it? I mean, it's a brilliant pass from Trent. It's then a brilliant change of direction and speed from Salah to get past Alonso, and then just that dink finish at the near post. It's just unstoppable, isn't it? I mean, I thought Alonso did pretty well against him across the course of the game, to be honest. But every time he gets the ball, you just think that something's going to happen. The defense of the opposition just seems to take a step back and be a little bit scared of him, which, I mean, the reputation just comes before him now. He's just so good, isn't he? And again, it's just a frustration because a goal like that should have been, a winner, or it should have been the one that sealed it for Liverpool. But unfortunately, it's a goal that is probably going to be a little bit forgotten because of obviously what's happened since. I think that the biggest winners today are Manchester City, and that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, it's a frustrating line to end. I think Martin Salah said at the end of the game, but it really is Manchester City that have won because the draw does neither us or Chelsea any favours. But we'll move backwards now to Kevin Kelleher in goal. A relatively decent performance from him. Some big saves that really kept us in it, Matt, wasn't there?
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant, to be honest. I think the first moment that really probably would have given him a lot of confidence was when he just cleared the ball away from Pulisic's feet when he's dribbling inside the penalty area. I mean, how many times have we seen Addison do something very, very similar? I thought that was absolutely superb. I mean, if you get it wrong, then it's a penalty and possibly a red card. But I mean, just so good. You can tell that they've been training together, and I thought he was really good. He couldn't really do anything with the 2 goals. Really good with his feet, which I think is massive. I think, a couple of seasons ago when you've got Adrian coming in, that was a real issue for Liverpool. But there was a good few moments from him. There was one where he was a pretty decent distance outside of his penalty area, and he just sort of drops the shoulder, goes past the defender and plays it into Fabinho. I think just having the ability to have, the ball at your feet, to be comfortable, to not get the opposition crowd up, I think is absolutely huge. So, yeah, look, he's got a big future ahead of him, but every time we see him play impresses, and every time I think I've seen him play now for Liverpool's first team, you kind of ask yourself, well, how long can they keep him? Because, he's a number 2. He's, a significant way behind Addison, obviously, but I still think he'd walk into a lot of Premier League teams. So, yeah, really good goalkeeper. Obviously promising that Liverpool have got that solid number 2 option. Hopefully Addison is back very soon. But, yeah, it's one of those where I think he will come away with probably more credit than anybody else, to be honest. I think he was really, really good and didn't really show any signs of being nervous or anything like that, which I think when you put him into a game like that, and that's the case, I think it's a real big positive for him and a big positive for Liverpool as well.
Well, he's busy. Do you think Van Dijk and Konate, 2 centre-halves, struggled? Because Chelsea had that system without a centre-forward and they were here, there and everywhere. And the pressing they were doing as well was phenomenal. Do you think the keeper was let down by centre-halves today?
It's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, I've seen people say it both ways in terms of the high line and the way that Liverpool play. I mean, before I go through the kind of positives and negatives, it's not going to change. It's what Jurgen Klopp has done for a long time. It's not going anywhere. So we have to kind of just accept that. But I think you saw both sides of it. I think for the Pulisic goal, I think Virgil van Dijk's a little bit too far back and doesn't seem to want to come across and pressure him, which obviously isn't good. And whenever Liverpool do concede a goal, it does kind of stand out as being one of those where you think, well, maybe if they were just a little bit deeper, that wouldn't happen. But the reverse of that is that maybe the Sadio Mane goal doesn't happen if Liverpool are not that high up the pitch. If they're not pressing, they're not compact, they don't win the ball that high up the pitch, and Mane doesn't score. So I think we've seen both sides of it today. I think the real issue really for me is the midfield. They just didn't quite get hold of the ball. They didn't manage to keep it particularly well. I think if you've got Thiago in there, and obviously we know his fitness record and all the rest of it isn't the best, but I think if you've got someone in there who can really keep hold of the ball, just take the ball off Chelsea for 5 minutes, not even do anything with it, just play keep ball at vital moments. I think suddenly then we're not really talking about the defence looking out of shape or anything, because Chelsea just wouldn't have the ball constantly going over the top. So yeah, I think that the high line will be in focus for a lot of people tonight, but for me it was more an issue higher up the pitch or in the middle of the pitch, rather that Liverpool really need to get sorted. If they do that, then I don't think we're really talking about the defence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'd definitely stick with the high line and trust this philosophy we've had for years. But the midfield, I don't think it's the case they were that bad. I think Chelsea were just brilliant. Like Kante, probably the best midfielder in the world. Kovacic playing out of his skin. They really did make it difficult for us, Matt, didn't they?
Yeah, Kovacic always has a good game against Liverpool.
Turns up against us, doesn't he?
Don't know what it is. I think Conte does as well, to be fair. I mean, obviously, he's a fantastic midfielder. Like you say, one of the very best in the world. But yeah, Fabinho just couldn't get near them, could he, today at times? It just looked like he was running through treacle, to be honest. He seemed to be turning so slowly whenever the ball was around him. And I think it's partially an issue from Liverpool. But again, like you say, it's one of those where sometimes you just have to say that the opposition were brilliant. And I think Tuchel got it right. Obviously, taking out Jorginho was probably a surprise. Obviously, the performances that he's had this season. But I think it was a perfect decision, really. It was a chaotic midfield. It was a midfield that Liverpool probably were second best in across the course of the game. But yeah, it's a hard one to analyse, because how much of it is Liverpool weren't great and how much of it was Chelsea just being brilliant. It's hard to say, but yeah, I think certainly Chelsea got the upper hand in that regard.
Well, last season, if we'd have had Andy Robertson missing for 3 games, it would have been a crisis. But Kostas Tsimikas, once again, another solid performance, and he was amongst it today, wasn't he, Matt?
Yeah, again, I thought he was really good. It's been strange this season for him, because he came in and there was kind of this talk of him being better than Robertson and needing to be in the team ahead of him, which I didn't particularly agree with. And then the last couple of games, there's kind of been a reverse of that, where people are starting to say, oh, maybe there's a bit of a drop off to Robertson. Maybe he's not as good as what we thought he was. But I think for me, it's somewhere in between. And I think that's the case today. I think if Andy Robertson hadn't been suspended, obviously he would have played. But I think Tsimikas did pretty well. There was a couple of corners that hit the first man and weren't particularly brilliant, but I thought in open play he was pretty good. He coped really well with Mason Mount and the players that Chelsea have got flying forward at you. It's not an easy place to go and play. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with him. I think, as you say, in previous seasons, it would have been a massive issue. I mean, we talk about James Milner struggling in midfield. It would have been him at left back had it not been for Tsimikas. So yeah, it was a strange one for him. I thought he did pretty well, but just couldn't quite get the assist. He got himself into a couple of decent positions and maybe undercooked or overcooked it at times. But look, generally speaking, it was a pretty good performance. And obviously, first choice left back, possibly the best left back in the world being missing. It's not a bad player to have as a deputy.
Well, of course, Jurgen Klopp was missing, and Pep Linders was in today. Maybe a sneak peek at his management style, or do you think it was just a replica of Klopp's style, Matt?
It's an interesting one again, because I do wonder. I mean, he was asked before the game, Pep, of sort of how much influence will Jurgen Klopp have during the game, and didn't really give too much away. He didn't really say that Klopp would be on the phone or anything. You assume that there would be some sort of communication. There must be, I'm sure. But yeah, it was an interesting one. It was probably very similar to what it would have been with Jurgen Klopp there. Again, obviously, probably the influence is there, or all the build-up and that has already been done by the time that Klopp tests positive. So yeah, it was a frantic game, frenetic game. I suppose the only thing that he influenced was probably the substitutions, which I thought he got right. Possibly Jurgen Klopp could have been calling for those as well. But I think, yeah, he probably got it right on the balance of it in terms of bringing the players on when he did. And yeah, who knows? Will he be the next Liverpool manager? I'm not too sure, but I think we'll probably see a little bit more of him. I imagine Klopp will be away for the Carabao Cup. I'm sure that's probably not something he'd particularly hate missing, to be honest, either. He doesn't particularly enjoy that competition, does he? So I'm sure we'll see a bit more of Pep over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see what happens with him in future.
Yeah, definitely will be very interesting in the next couple of weeks. I think we'll be expecting to see a lot more of him, Matt. But you did say there, frustrating, fiery. I'm not going to say the third F because it was a bit of an annoying game, one to drop points in. But a draw at Stamford Bridge, not a terrible result. Thank you very much for joining me, Matt, and thank you to all of you for watching as well. We'll be back in the week with the League Cup and FA Cup action for you on the Blood Red channel, so join us then. But for now, it's goodbye.